actually in the calendar invitation. Hold on 1 second. I want to give him the right one.
For those just jumping on, welcome. We're getting some final stuff set up here, waiting for a few more folks.
Okay, sent.
So, Jim, are you the only one who can see me and hear me? I think.
Yeah, I see people. More people are hopping on now.
It seems that way, David.
I'll try again.
But it's weird because you're not even listed in the you're not in the attendees. You're still listed as a trainer. So I'm not sure why you're.
Yeah, because I can hear all four of you and see all of you as well.
Oh, it says out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he used the
Oh, there you
guest
go. You're in.
in. Cool. Okay, perfect.
So I'm in now. Can you hear me now, Monica?
All right, you want to start?
Can you hear David now?
Nope, he's
Can
out
you hear
again.
me?
That's
What?
weird. I'm seeing him, no problem.
Yeah, and
It's telling
I'm
me
not
he's
clicking
out.
on anything.
How about you, Humberto? Can you see David?
No, I can't.
That's weird.
Let me see here. Yeah, I had you as a trainer. I'm not sure. It said in for a second there, and then back out again.
But I can see and hear all of you. Let me try the link that Monica sent
There's
again.
no option to the right of David for you?
Nope, just the transfer session control.
Okay. Sorry, folks. We're having technical difficulties from Ecuador.
Want to make sure you can see and hear David.
I can see and hear all of you.
Yeah, it's apparently we just can't see you.
But you're the only one who can listen to me, right?
I can
Monica
see you.
can't hear me.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
So he's gonna try and come back in on another link. It's only you two that can't see David really. As soon as he comes back in.
Okay, it says David's back in as a trainer on my end.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shows in.
go.
Is it working out?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you too.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. There we go. I don't know what happened.
All right, Monica, let's get us kicked off here.
All right, sweet. So welcome to the first annual Volar Adelante Latin American Forum. Today's topic is Evolución del FBO, Data and Technology. There are going to be two ways to join in the conversation. One method is the chat box you see on the left. So please take the opportunity to introduce yourself, your name, your title, and your company. And then the second way to get involved is to ask us any questions. We will be stopping periodically to answer any questions that you guys will come up with. So X1's headquarters are actually located in Miami. So we're very accustomed to work very closely with the Latin community. And we thought that this was a perfect opportunity to open up a conversation with the business aviation community in Latin America. And I mean, me, Cuban American, we're very accustomed to speaking a lot of Spanglish. So if you guys have any questions, anybody in the audience and would like any translation, nosotros podemos hablar español aquí. Estamos acostumbrados en inglés en español. Humberto can help me with any translation. David, we're obviously the same thing, but we really felt like we needed to do something in this particular region. And we're excited to have you guys. So we want to start off with one question. And the question to introduce is, so what are the top 3 challenges that you're currently facing in your FBO? Does everyone see the poll question?
And we expect those to be different than what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own, there's even here, we constantly say that one line that you've been to one FBO, you've been to one FBO. And that's just, that can happen in the same neighborhood. I was with Landmark Aviation here in the States, and I was here in Miami. We have 3 FBOs in Miami within 8 miles of each other, with Tamiami, MIA, and OPF. Same airport authority, same name, same sign on the buildings. You take those 3 airports, and the FBOs themselves could not have been any different. And that was within 8 miles of the same place. Different customer bases. You had Tammy, who was a lot more based. A lot of the smaller airplanes. You had my MIA, which is just global, international, and you had the Opalaca, which had kind of become this hybrid Teterboro type airport for South Florida, with just that massive amount of Latin American traffic plus all the domestic traffic. That was it's probably one of my favorite airports I ever worked at, Opalaca.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and Jim, I need to share the presentation, or if you like to share the presentation.
Sure, I'll pop that.
Make my introduction.
I'll pop that up on the screen. Okay, can you see the?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep, see it. Next slide. So I wanted to start off with the topic. The industry in general is changing, and you'll see even the changes in large airports and commercial airlines. And so what we wanted to touch base today is specifically FBO. Why in the large airports, you'll see all these technological advances through models, and it's most likely because they deal with a lot of volume. So there's not a sense of urgency as in the FBO sector as you would see in the commercial sector. Some of the things that you'd see is applications to manage the reservations, chat boxes, flight notifications, online payments. Virtual map experiences are happening now where people can look at the actual location in a 3D experience rendering. But why hasn't the FBO business adapted? So I want to introduce Humberto Zuluaga, who's our CTO. He's been with the company from the very start. And I want Humberto, you can introduce yourself and get us started with our technology talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for those of you who are in Latin America, I'm Colombian. I was born in close to Cali, a small town close to Cali, and I've been most of my life working for a completely different space. I started with this company when it first started around 5 to 6 years ago, and but before that, my whole professional life happened in completely different industries. I used to work for companies related to the food industry, confectionery, retail, and manufacturing, pharmaceutical. And then 6 years ago is when I completely changed from that to coming to the general aviation to start working on what today is X1 FBO and all the different products that that are part of that suite. I've been in technology since the very beginning. I'm a computer science engineer. I have a major in telecommunications, and technology has been my life forever. Coming over to X1, it was a great opportunity to, and we're gonna talk a lot. We're gonna talk about that in a few minutes. But it's been a great opportunity for me and for this group to actually use technology to help revolutionize the way that an FBO can work. And again, we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes, and all the technology that we have at hand today and that we've been leveraging and what we see that we can do in the future.
So from there, do you want to go to the next slide there, or?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna talk about these different technologies. This is not supposed to be a technology session in terms of going deep into these technologies. Most of these technologies are actually terms that many of you may be familiar with, hopefully. But we're going to talk about how we can use them, how we are using them today, and how we think that FBOs and this industry can benefit from it in general. So as I was explaining a few minutes ago, I've been in the technology space for almost 30 years now. And I've been obviously witness and participant to the impressive pace at which technology has been evolving for these last 30 years. 30 years ago, many of the things that we see today were completely unthinkable. And now they have become part of our lives. Like, for instance, explaining a kid what it used to be 30 years ago or how things used to work 30 years ago. It's really hard. I have 2 kids, and it's sometimes a struggle to explain them how I was able to live in a world 30 years ago where there were no smartphones. I was not able to take a picture of myself and share it on the internet immediately. It was a world where I had to go to a Photoshop to actually bring my camera film and have it revealed and wait for 3 days to get my pictures back and then put them on an album of photos to share them with people whenever I had the chance to see them in my house. Now, all of that is basically one click away. All of that is available in one little device, a smartphone that is connected to everything, and we can do everything we can with it. So change has been impressive during the last 30 years. I'm rather new to this aviation industry. Again, I've been only here for 6 years, whereas my colleagues like Jim and most of the staff at X1 have been in the aviation industry forever. 20, 25 years of experience in the case of Jim working in aviation. So it's been kind of new to me. When I was
I'm just going to throw in there that his 6 years were dog years in aviation in software. I'd probably let him run an FBO at this point.
Yeah, Jim uses to joke saying that most of us can now become general managers of many at an FBO. I don't know if that's true, but definitely I know enough to be dangerous, as some people say.
That's the best thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been pretty nice. But actually, when I came over, it was kind of a shock because again, I come from a world that was completely different. Technology was part of it in every aspect. When I started 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, the companies that I was working for, they were already investing millions of dollars in technology. These were big companies, of course. We're talking about a big scale, but still they were clear about the need to invest in technology. It was a do or die situation. You either got on board with it, you started investing in technology, or you were not going to have the competitive edge that you would need for the future. And I think everybody can understand that today. Companies that don't evolve with technology eventually are going to be out of business. So I come from this world where 30 years ago we were already making sure that everybody in the company had a computer on their desktops. Back then they were desktops. Laptops used to be probably heavier than an actual desktop. They were like kind of a brick. But everybody had a computer. Back then we started talking about internet, started about moving into the internet world. Everybody was already getting emails as their main means of communication. So there was a lot of investment in technology back then. So when I left that world, we're at a point, again, around 6 years ago, when I left that world, the company that I was working for at that point was already going into full wireless offices. Mostly every employee had a smartphone. We had applications that we could deploy into those smartphones and use them to access corporate data. We had data analytics tool that allowed us to see our sales information, financial information, and then do forecast, create what if scenarios, and understand how our business could behave depending on the different patterns of consumers. In our case, we were dealing with directly with consumers, and all of that technology was already there. So when I came over to the aviation world, it was kind of a shock to me, especially because it was here in the US, that a lot of these FBOs were still running like they were back in the 90s, and some of them even back in the 80s or 70s. FBOs running on paper and on Excel. And we know that even today we have FBOs that are still doing that. And I'm talking about the US, that has usually been in the forefront of technology. And it was kind of a shock to me to see that. But it was also eye-opening because I saw that as a great opportunity. I saw that the great opportunity that Jim and George and the people that created this company were already seeing in the market, the opportunity to really disrupt this industry and create a positive impact in the way that FBOs work. And that's what we've been doing now for over 6 years since we started this company. So it was kind of a big shock for me in the beginning, but it's been a great ride so far. So at this point, I would like to first ask a little bit about. I think most of the people that we have here are from FBO, so we have a couple poll questions here. The first one is, we would like you to rate your FBO in terms of technology adoption from 1 to 10, where 1 would be, I'm still on paper, I'm doing nothing that has to do with technology, I barely have an internet connection to browse the internet, or 10 is I'm using technology to the full extent, I'm doing mobility, I'm using the cloud. So if we can take a couple minutes here, Monica, to trigger the poll and hear from people to understand what we're dealing with here.
Yep, it's launched.
Yeah, it's loading.
We also launched the one for ask them what everybody's using today.
Okay, perfect. So we can continue then. Okay, and there's another poll that I would like to trigger here, and it's what are the biggest challenges that you face to adopt technology? And I think this is very relevant here because we are dealing with people in Latin America, and the market is. I know what Latin America is. I come from Colombia, and I know, and in my previous jobs, I had the chance to travel across most of Latin America, and I understood the different challenges that technology has in these different companies. Technology adoption doesn't go at the same pace that it goes here in the US, and I think we all know that. So, so we have this other poll where we are asking you, what are your biggest challenges to adopt technology? What is stopping you from doing it? There might be different reasons. Hopefully, we're covering the most relevant ones. So it's something that we would like to hear from you about also. So going now into the actual technologies that we are leveraging today and that are available to all of you, and that we are at X1 have been using from day one or have been trying to adopt during the last few years. The first one that we have to talk about is the cloud. The cloud is a concept that, amazingly enough, for a lot of people is still new. But in reality, the cloud has been around for over 15 years, which is when Amazon Web Service started. And even before that, all the building blocks of the cloud already existed. Virtualization, internet. A lot of those technologies were already out there, and there were already some solutions out there that somehow resembled what has become the cloud. So when we started X1 FBO, it was really a no-brainer for us. We didn't even consider other options different from becoming a cloud-first company. We had the option we didn't even have the option. It was out there, but we didn't even consider the option of creating a software that would need to be installed on a local server in a customer's data center. But that's something that we never considered. We knew from the very beginning that we wanted to be a company that would be able to leverage the different benefits that the cloud has, like ease of access, ubiquity. If you have a cloud software, you can access that from anywhere you want, and we thought that was very important. Scalability, being able to grow our resources dynamically without having to reprovision hardware and dealing with all the challenges that come with hardware and hosting applications on a physical server. And one of the most important ones really for us was the need to be able to keep the pace for our customers. And I think that's paid off greatly. And I think that's one of the things that we pride ourselves the most, and it's that we listen to our customers. And a lot of what we built into X1 actually is coming from our customers' feedback, and we've been able to easily bring that feedback into X1. And that's because we are a cloud-first company. If we were dealing with servers and having to distribute packages and having to distribute software, the story would be completely different. We wouldn't have the agility that we have right now with being a cloud company. So the cloud has been a determining factor in our success. And actually, I would like to hear from Jim in regards to that, because we get a lot of ideas from customers, also from Jim and from our internal people. And I would like to hear from you, Jim, or to tell people the benefits that you see with our ability to be constantly evolving in our software and producing updates and coming up with new features that enrich the user's experience.
I mean, I think that part kind of speaks for itself. Just the fact that a feature or a request can be built and deployed within a matter of a day and a half in some cases. That's just cool to see. I mean, that's a game changer. But it's when you start to compare that to legacy platforms and the stuff that most of us came from or were using before. I was I was a Landmark guy, so our legacy software at Landmark, it was fake cloud, I guess. It was we hosted it. It was our machines, our servers in our headquarters or near our headquarters that ran it all. But one of the things that it was really poor at was the ability to scale, like something Humberto just mentioned. we would have busy days across a network of 70 plus FBOs, and you would actually see that in our software because it's our own infrastructure. Our infrastructure is a certain size. So when we had really busy days, like the kind of days that we just had, coming through out of Thanksgiving and going into Christmas, it impacted how we served our customers because it would slow the software down. One of the really cool things about the technology we're using today and the cloud-based stuff is that we can set thresholds, we can set limits. If we see capacity within our network growing to a certain, scale, we can actually just start adding capacity to it just like that. Whereas before, we would have had to go buy more servers and install them and configure them to have that happen. It's much more dynamic with the cloud, and we can do so much more with it because of that. So you can always, no matter how busy you are, no matter what's going on, we can scale the infrastructure behind it to meet what the needs of the customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and actually, I think that is something that easily customers can notice, or actually not notice, which is the great thing about this. Not notice that we're making updates. The way that we work with the cloud, we can easily make updates in our platform without the customers even noticing that we're updating the platform. So all of a sudden, you're logged in X1 right now, and then you log out. A couple hours later, you get back, or tomorrow you get back, and now you have a couple, 3, 5 more new features that you didn't have yesterday. And all of that happens completely transparent. We don't have to bring down our services. We don't have to ask for time from our customers to provide those updates. In most cases, all of that is transparent, and all of that is leveraging the power of the cloud, which, by the way, for those of you who do not know, we're using Azure from Microsoft right now. We used to use AWS in the past. They're all very compelling solutions. They're all great solutions, and they all offer that ability to scale, as Steve was talking about, and to grow as you need, or even grow during peak times and shrink your capacity again when you are not using all that capacity at that moment. And the cloud is there. The cloud is available to anybody. We've been able to use it for our own benefit, but it's out there and it's so easy to get on it. And it's really a no-brainer to me. I cannot think of myself having to deal with hardware again after doing cloud for this last 6-7 years. I think this is one of the best things that could have happened in terms of technology. Something important here to mention when we're talking about the cloud is its security, because some people tend to be a little bit afraid of using the cloud because they feel that it's not going to be as secure as having their software and their hardware in their own data center. Like they feel they have like from my perspective, with all due respect, because probably a lot of you here still have that type of thinking, and you have your application hosted internally, which is completely valid. But there's, from my perspective, a full sense of security there, that if you have your stuff in your own data center, you're very secure. But if you move to the cloud, you're not. The reality is that these cloud vendors like AWS, like Azure, like Google, they invest millions of dollars in security. Nobody can be 100% secure, that's for sure. Whoever says that is lying completely. But definitely, these companies are working very hard to make sure that these platforms are as secure as possible from the underlying infrastructure. But on top of that, they give us as customers, and you, when you're leveraging these technologies, the ability to provide additional levels of security. Many tools that are out there, out of the box, you just need to configure them correctly and make sure that you're using them the right way within your application to secure it as much as possible. These tools are not as easy to get when you have your own infrastructure in your own data center. Besides the fact that you have to deal with hardware yourself. If you're having issues with your hardware, you have to go and solve those issues yourself. You have to have a staff to maintain that efficiently. And that's where a lot of people struggle, because they end up with very, very old technology in their data centers because they don't have the ability to be growing at the pace that the technology is evolving outside. And that goes along with the security side of things. So you end up with with a bunch of hardware there that is not as secure as it was 3 years ago, because you have to be upgrading your hardware or getting new hardware to secure that. So I think that's a very important thing to mention here in terms of the cloud. And we actually have another question here for everybody regarding cloud. We want to hear from you whether you are afraid of adopting cloud technologies because of security. Is that a decision, or is that a factor that affects your decision to move into a cloud-based platform because you feel like security would be a problem?
And Humberto, people already had answered the question. So I think a good follow-up question is for the chunk of people that are still afraid of cloud-based solutions. Do they have any questions in specific that we can address their fears and concerns about cloud-based?
Yeah, you can ask questions in that little on the left-hand side there. The questions.
Because 40% answered that they are still afraid due to security concerns for cloud technology. So
40%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is not surprising. That's definitely a concern that a lot of people have. And again, security should be a concern for everybody, regardless of whether you're in the cloud or you have your applications hosted locally in your own data center. Security is a big thing, but we really think that security in the cloud has another level. You really have a lot of tools at hand that you can easily deploy to secure your infrastructure. But again, obviously, we understand, and the cloud is something that people eventually have to feel comfortable with. But definitely for us, it's been a great journey, and we think that the tools that we have today at hand, we would not be able to get something like that if we were not using the cloud for our platform.
The moral of the story there is that the cloud and that technology behind it, the security behind it, enables us to do a bunch of things that you could have never done before in this space. And, our single point app and a bunch of other things where all these different systems, even the flight bridge integration and fuel links, all those things are because the cloud exists, and all these systems have learned how to talk to each other through the cloud. It's a huge advantage, and it allows us to create technology in this space that nobody's ever seen before. Things like our IoT, which Humberto is going to give us a brief explanation of the Internet of Things and how even that's a huge component of what we're doing, and that connectivity, where it brings that connectivity to everybody so we can all operate off the same sheet of music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mobility and Internet of Things has been one of the major forefronts for us during the last few years. It's probably one of the areas where we have made most of the investment in terms of time, research, and development. We've been investing a lot on that front, and that's been a way that and Jim will probably talk a little bit about this from the business perspective, but this has allowed us to revolutionize the way that the ramp works, the way that the line service technicians can operate in a more efficient way. IoT is a term that is out there. And again, we're not trying to be too technical here. This is not a technical session. It's about technology, but we don't want to get too technical. But you can think about IoT as basically all of these little sensors and devices that can connect to the network and improve your daily life, at your home and in your business. And, talk about smart lights, talk about, sensors, talk about Google Nest to control the temperature in your house. There's a lot of technology out there that we can use. Talk about in the FBO world, talk about technology that would allow you to control your hangar doors, be able to control your fans inside your hangar. A lot of that technology is already out there. Most of these technologies or most of these products already have built-in capabilities that would allow you to connect this to this big IoT network and control the way that they operate. And there's also the ability to build a lot of this technology yourself. Obviously, that requires more time and effort and knowledge. But this is what we have decided to do, for instance, in our case with our IoT X1 Cloud Connect solution and our single point devices. IoT and mobility, they have converged in this solution that we are giving to our FBOs for the ramp to be able to make their operation more efficient on the ramp. So we have built an application that runs on an Android device. It's a ROG device that has has all the conditions to be able to run on the ramp. And you know the conditions of the ramp, most of you, where you're going to have high temperatures or lower temperatures here in the US, at least, and probably down south in Latin America, where you have seasons. You can go from very, very cold to very, very hot during the summer. These devices allow you to operate in those conditions. Our application, along with the X1 Cloud Connect device, allows you to do the whole process of fueling an airplane completely automatically. And this all comes from from the experience from Jim from back in the day, and seeing the problems that they used to have with how to deal with line service technicians having to write down on a piece of paper the meter numbers or how much fuel was dispensed on an actual operation. All of that still creates a lot of issues in terms of reliability, because it's really hard many times to actually understand what's being written on a piece of paper. So transposing that to a system later on can create data inconsistencies. So we have used these two technologies to be able to bring those efficiencies to the ramp.
That's the one thing line guys have in common with doctors is our handwriting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't had to deal with that, but I mean, having to understand what somebody else is writing, it's usually a complicated task. It's really hard to understand, especially line guys, I would assume, that are, sitting on a truck and are having to go from one airplane to the other. They're just trying to, fill out that paper as quickly as they can so they can go to the next activity. With IoT, we've been able to create a device that can connect to the registers directly and read and write. Jim is showing it right now. It's a device that was actually built using an Arduino microcontroller, which is a great thing that has really helped this revolution of IoT. Whenever you don't have a device in the market that can do what you need. In this case, Arduino allowed us to create something very specific for this market that would connect to these registers, read from it, and write to it. So when you have a fueling, let's say, and probably for many of you in Latin America, the fueling part does not apply. But here in the US is huge. So being able to, from your application on your mobile device, to accept a fueling, basically you are accepting that you're going to go and complete that task and go into the airplane and hit start on the meter or the register, complete your register, and after that just hit stop and get all that information back to your device, and then immediately into X1 in this case, into your system. That is something that was not possible several years ago, and the technology that we have today at hand allows us to do a lot of that. So I think it would be good to hear from you, Jim, from your experience, how things changed there in terms of what was possible back then, and the way that this can revolutionize the ramp right now.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. But what we're gonna as we get into this a little bit, we're going to tell you very specifically and give you a scenario of where the IoT, where this technology is going to have a huge impact on the ramp. I mean, in the customer service aspect of what we're doing, and one of the things that was mentioned in one of the challenges that we're talking about for the FBOs is competition. Is we're not up against just another FBO at an airport, another handler at our airport anymore. Our competition has become very, very global. We're up against the FBO they're coming from, the FBO they're going to next. So the experience and services have become more and more important. And this technology and the details that it allows us to garner from sensors and spit back out. I mean, we're on the verge of being able to do things that, one of the questions I've always hated was, you're at an FBO like MIA and somebody walks in and asks where their $70 million airplane is. And you're like, oh, hang on a minute. Let me go find out. That's horrible. but it does happen. And, because we have a lot of airplanes in the ramp, we know where any one specific one is at a time. For that individual CSR at that desk, that's a task. So there's a lot of really cool stuff with how these sensors that IoT is, and connecting them to the cloud and presenting the information are going to have a big impact on our business going forward.
Mm-hmm.
From knowing where airplanes are, to making fueling simpler, to giving our customer service representatives more time to actually perform customer service. That's a novel concept, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all of this technology is out there already, and it's been out there for a while. So we're just using that technology that we have in our hands, and
applying it to our specific issues that we have in this industry.
Exactly, correct. That's been a huge thing for us, and even in Latin America, where the challenges may be a little bit different in terms of technology. All of this is out there already. I mean, it's something that you can have there. Cellular networks may not be at the same stage that they're here in the US, where we're already deploying 5G technologies. Maybe in Latin America, they're just starting to get to that. But these solutions do not even require 5G to work. You can work on an LTE network, on a 4G network without any problem, because the applications that you can build do not really have to have that doesn't have those requirements, those very high requirements in terms of bandwidth. So even if you're running on an LTE, which is pretty much available everywhere in Latin America, you can run this application without any issue. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but this application allows you to not only do fueling, but do complete other services. Every other service, your line guys are able to see them on this app, see what they have to do, and be able to complete those services and enter information on how those services were completed. And, along with that, we have the ability to, and I know that may be a little bit sensitive depending on the country where you are, because that some people can take that as tracking and an invasion of the people's privacy. But it's the ability to know where your fuelers are when they are completing those tasks, because these devices have GPS, have modern technologies that allow you to know where they were when they completed all of these. And you can even have a complete log of everything that was done by the line service technician and when they did it. So that's been a huge one for us, for sure. And it's something that we keep working on, and there are many ideas that Jim will talk about in a moment of the stuff that we can do there. Robotic tugs, Jim, I think you're going to talk about robotic tugs and flight tracking.
Yep. One of the things that is one of the biggest components, I think, and David and I had a conversation about this earlier today, is a lot of the challenges you guys are facing in Latin America are the same as the United States. I mean, we're seeing these enormous increases in traffic across the board, across most of the globe, where everybody's just getting busier, and the labor market is not just a struggle here. The labor market's been a struggle globally too. And I'm gonna go off on a slight tangent here, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. But as an industry across the globe, we have done a very poor job of representing ourselves to the average person. How many out of everybody in here, and you could just raise your hand or answer in the chat or the questions, but how often do you have to explain what your job is to somebody who you just met? How many people actually have a clue what we do when we say, well, I'm in the FBO business? It's stunning how many people have no clue this industry even exists. That's a problem for us, because our jobs are cool. I mean, I'm not doing this because, I didn't get rich being a line guy. But I love my job. And a lot of us do. It's a cool industry, but we've done such a terrible job of telling the rest of the world we exist, because, it's business jets, it's private airplanes, these are rich people. Let's be quiet about it. Shh. That's wrong. We put ourselves in a bad position now where we're struggling, as even more so than the rest of industry in general, because we don't have the staff to fill these positions. That's where this technology is going to become more important, because we can maximize the potential of the people we have by leveraging the technology. And that goes to our hardware, the stuff that we're doing here at X1. And we're not the only ones doing this. I'll call out Atlantic as a chain. They have really cool technology at that level. They're doing a lot of what we're doing in this space. It's happening in the maintenance space in aviation. Companies like Flight Docs are bringing that stuff to maintenance. It's the way this is going to have to go to leverage resources that we have available to us right now. Robotic Tugs is one of the cool things. Companies like Mototuck are building these robotic tugs, remote control, that can move any airplane. It gives us this capability to do more with less, because, our rule at Landmark was, if you're moving an airplane, you have to see all four corners of the airplane. We don't want to, the worst customer service you can give is taking somebody's winglet off. That's horrible. It's a terrible call to make. It's just not something you want to do. So we would have to have 3 people moving airplanes in a hangar to see all 4 corners, so we didn't damage customers' airplanes. Now with these robotic tugs, you can actually do that. I can position myself in a perfect spot to see my 2 corners and one person to see the other 2 corners. I can get behind the airplane and move it back in view with my remote there. So there's a lot of these technologies coming online, and I'll touch on the flight tracking too. This information of giving us that heads up on this airplane. This airplane's 20 minutes out. So now we're connecting the system to the flight tracking. In the flight tracking, now we're getting notifications that, okay, this aircraft is 20 minutes out. That's great. Before we used to have to go look that up. Now we're getting notification. That's cool. But now we're taking it a step further and saying, okay, it's 20 minutes out. It needs this, this, and this. So now you're extra prepared for that arrival when it comes in, because you're getting a heads up. You're getting more detail. There's more information available to you. Again, we're going to get into that a little bit more later, but that's a huge part of what we're trying to accomplish here, is taking these technologies that Humberto's talking about and leveraging them to make our jobs easier. Because as I was mentioning before, that competition that we talked about, it's going to become more and more important for all of us, for FBOs, for handlers, those everywhere, to be on top of our game with customer service. There's a minimum expectation these days that we're just going to have to meet. That's different than it was before, and it's kind of sucks, because we're trying to meet that expectation with and our resources are being squeezed, our staffing's being squeezed, and traffic's increasing all at the same time. So this is the perfect time to leverage these technologies to solve some of these problems. Before I get into my whole spiel, I want to let David give us his 2 cents on, because a lot of what we're saying, Humberto and I, we spend the vast majority of our time in the domestic U.S. market, U.S. and Canada to a large degree. That's where the majority of our FBOs are. We have FBOs in Europe, we have FBOs in Australia, we have FBOs in the Caribbean, and now thanks to David and Lats and a couple other FBOs, we're entering Latin America. So, David, if you could give us, let's talk about the Latin American market particularly, and some of what we've talked about, to how this stuff you think can impact the issues that you guys are having in Latin America, and the comparison between the U.S. and Latin America, some of the things we discussed, and what you're actually dealing with on a daily basis.
Hey, Jim, thank you very much. Well, just real quick introduction for everybody who know where I'm actually working from. My name is David, and I am the FBO manager here at Ecuacentair FBO. I'm based in Ecuador, South America, specifically in Quito, which is the capital, and we're starting operations in Guayaquil again. And I've been in the aviation business for about 12 years now. I started in United Airlines, then I moved on to KLM. And about 4 years ago, I changed into this FBO industry. And as you said, Jim, it's impressive how many people don't know that we exist. I mean, I'm in a very small airport. It's an international airport, of course, but it's very small. And as a deputy manager for KLM, I used to know all these station managers. And when I, went there to say goodbye, that I was no longer going to be in their terminal, but in the general aviation terminal, most of them didn't even know that the general aviation terminal exists.
And that's in the same industry.
Yes, in the same airport. And I didn't know that either. Before I got offered the job, I knew there was this company, but I didn't quite understand it deeply. And technology here, as Humberto said before, it's of course a different pace than in the US. Uh, the best example is we don't get Amazon shipped over here, so that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of difficult, and it's kind of a challenge to keep the pace of the FBOs in the States. I've had the opportunity to go to some FBOs in the United States, and pleasantly enough, I find that we're not that very far behind. It's
We're
very
pretty far behind
challenging.
here.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, because for instance, we're still doing our invoicing in Excel, for instance, or we still keep our records of our flights in paper files. But that's also regulations because we have to have it for, I don't know, 3 or 5 years or so. That's the rule. And our civil aviation still needs the stamp on the weight and balance. So these kind of things keep us behind, no matter the efforts that we make. So speaking of cloud-based systems, if I want to keep my files cloud-based, I can do that, but only if I scan the documents, because I think it's a matter of everybody joining on the same page. Because again, the same example, if I'm to file a flight plan, I need it to be stamped and signed by the inspector on duty on the civil aviation on the tower. So I don't know if that's in the States. I'm guessing not, because you have huge airports there, and there's no time to move around. But we have to do it like that here. Um, but those are kind of the challenges that we face technology wise. There's also a lot of people who's afraid of going into a cloud based system. People don't trust that very much. I'm younger than most FBO managers, or than most station managers for others for that matter. So I'm kind of used to technology. It's my day-to-day basis. But there's some people that just don't trust their information being on the cloud, and they ask questions that who has access, who can download that, what if that gets lost? There's all my client list there. So I think what you were saying before, Jim, it's a matter of us teaching our customers, or teaching ourselves to trust the industry, to trust the technologies, to trust the cloud-based systems, and not to be surprised when we invest in technology. You were talking before I came in about the remote tugs, and we actually have one here. I bought a towbarless stock about 2 years ago, and it was the big surprise for everybody. And I have people lining up to see how it works. And I'm talking about operations people. I'm talking about TOVs from other airlines. I'm talking about my own team. People call me and say, "Hey, can I go and see your new robot, your new toy?" And yes, it's space saving and hangar. It's very versatile. It's very easy to use. Once you understand all the security features. But it's impressive how one of those things can bring so many people's attention to you, and start asking questions, and saying, but hey, was it a smart move? Is it safe? Wasn't it better to buy the regular tow and the tow bar? Yes, it is. I have that as well, but I have a hanger, and it's space saving. Yes, but it's better to keep it safe. I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't use it. So there's a lot of resistance from what I can tell. A lot of
Mhm.
interest, yes, but resistance.
I can tell
Mhm.
you that's not very different in the States either. We see that all the time, and it's comfort. It's just a risk averse industry in general, and change in and of itself introduces risk. So we get a lot. We
Mhm.
that's part of our day. That's part of our day to day life, is dealing with with people. It's the fear of change. That's half of what I'm going to talk about, is exactly what you just mentioned, and people's aversion to change. Now, one of the things you mentioned that's more of a challenge in Latin America is there's, don't get me wrong, we have plenty of regulation here, but our regulation tends to be a little more after the fact, not
Mhm.
middle of the process.
Mhm.
And we do understand that. We have FBOs in like in the Caribbean, and even in Australia, where certain forms and documentation are required. So that's actually features that we've built in X1 to make that easier. The forms themselves live in the platform, and the information can be filled out from the information you're already entering. So it reduces that double entry. Again, we're talking about things that really using the technology to improve productivity, and using technology to deal with government. That's one of the best ways to improve productivity there is, because man, government could screw some stuff up, and that's global.
Mm-hmm.
But things like papers, yeah, there's a lot we can do there to make that easier, and it's a perfect use of the technology. One of the things that we're working with now in Latin America is a lot of e-invoicing requirements. In Latin America, to a large degree, Latin America more than other countries we found so far have e-invoicing requirements where all the invoices have to go. They have to, the government has to improve your invoice at that level. So we're actually working with technology now that even automates that process. Again, just try and let your teams in Latin America spend more time with the customers. Because again, we go back to competition being one of the key things that we're dealing with. And we really, really want your people to make that impression with the customers. And we do that by leveraging the technology we've been talking about here.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, now that Jim mentioned the example of the electronic invoicing, that actually touches on another subject that we wanted to talk about, and it's the APIs in the web services. Those are huge in today's internet world, and for a lot of people, probably they don't even know what it is, and they don't really have to. But these APIs, which in application programming interfaces and web services, are basically ways in which a lot of these different entities and companies are allowing their different applications to talk to each other. That electronic invoice example is a very good one. Each government has decided how to implement that. I know that in Colombia we have it. Brazil has had it for a long time. I know, based on conversations with David, that they also have it in Ecuador. So, especially in Latin America, because tax evasion is huge, they have decided to implement systems like this one, where, and people in Latin America will be more familiar with this, but that allows you to send those invoices electronically to that local tax entity to make sure that taxes are not being evaded, that they're going to be paying what they need to pay for those invoices. And all of that is actually happening in most cases via APIs and web services. It's basically a way for them to allow anybody to interact with their systems. You just connect to them, using predefined interfaces. And that way you can exchange information. You can send information or receive information. Here in the US, for instance, Jim already talked about a couple integrations that we have in X1 with FlightBridge, which is a scheduling system, to simplify it, because I don't think FlightBridge is very much available in Latin America. And we also have fewer links. All those integrations that we have built have been done using APIs, and they are there. And people would be surprised to see that a lot of different applications that are cloud-based and that are available out there are exposing their services via APIs. You can connect to a lot of this stuff directly. If you had the knowledge and you wanted to build your own applications, you would have a lot of APIs available. Not sure how familiar people are with an application or a platform called IFTTT, which allows you to integrate different platforms. And that's just an example, because there are many. But this platform allows you to automate a lot of your processes by connecting to different APIs and web services. So you can create an application where, if you are connected to, let's say, X1, and you get an invoice from X1, then that invoice is automatically posted to an accounting system. That's just an example of what you could do. In our case, we have been using those APIs to integrate with these different applications. And one of them that has been huge is our ability to integrate with different accounting systems, so that we can offer to our customers the best accounting solution out there. A conscious decision that we made from the very beginning was that we were not going to build our own accounting system, but instead we would integrate with different accounting systems in the market. So using those APIs, we've been able to integrate X1 with Microsoft Business Central, with Microsoft Dynamics GP, with QuickBooks Online, for instance, which is an integration that we built. All of that has been done through APIs. So APIs has been huge for what we see today out there in the market. Again, a lot of people don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but a lot of this happens because of APIs. If you're familiar with Alexa and the skills that you can turn on in Alexa, all of that happens because of APIs. Without them, wouldn't be able to do a lot of that stuff that integrates different services and allows them to act as their one single application, which actually was our idea from the very beginning with X1. And it's that we wanted X1 to become like an ecosystem where X1 would be the hub, but it would allow you to integrate X1 to a lot of different systems and software outside of X1. And right, the reality is that we are just scratching the surface, because we have in our plans a lot of different integrations that would enrich the X1 FBO experience. That same technology of APIs has actually allowed us to make a lot of enhancements in the payment technologies, which is the last one I'm going to talk about, the current technologies. Payment is something that is very important to us. So we have built different solutions that leverage mobility and the power of APIs and the cloud to improve the payment process here in the US, at least, and eventually we would be able to bring down to every country in the world. But right now, with these solutions, we were able to create an application called X1 Pay terminal, which basically runs on a payment terminal device. It's specific to that functionality of paying for your invoices. And you can bring that device anywhere you want in your FBO. So you can have it in front of your customer service representatives and use it right there for your customers to pay right in front of you. Or you can even send that terminal to the ramp for a pilot to pay right there. You can send the invoice from X1 to that device. That device is going to display a QR code, which you can use to pay using another application that we have built called X1 Pilot, that allows the pilots to store their payment methods in their devices. So talk about enhancing the customer experience using that. It's making it easier for your CSRs. It's making it easier for your pilots, because the pilot doesn't even have to go to your front desk to pay. They can pay from the cockpit of their aircrafts and get on their way as soon as they want. So all of that is available today, and it's possible with this mobility and APIs technologies and all the different advances in terms of payment technologies like NFC and EMVs and many other technologies that we can deploy using this technology.
So I'm not going to bore you with any details on me. Obviously, you got the name up there. I'm one of the co-founders of X1. I'm the line service guy. I started this company with a good buddy of mine, George, who was in technology, kind of in the shipping industry, dealing with payments. And I was telling him how screwed up our business is. And somehow over a Cub Scout campfire one day, we figured this might be a business, and here we are. But all this technology that we're talking about, and that's available, right? All this stuff that's available that our industry hasn't been using, our goal has been to apply this technology and make the job of running an FBO or a handler actually easier than it's been for years, because it hasn't gotten easier. When I first started a long time ago, I mean, it's almost identical, the job. A fueler does almost the exact same thing today as he did 26 years ago when I first started. But our regulatory environments, I mean, our customer expectations, the aircraft, everything around us has gotten more complicated. And we just keep doing the same thing over and over again and surviving. And it's, we recognize that has to change, and we could bring some technology to change that. Now, why hasn't it changed? That's a really good question. All this technology that Humberto just talked about is available. How come it wasn't even a thing till we started to, as a group, we started to bring it to bear on the industry, the FBO specifically. I'm going to take a shot at and answer this question. But, we have all these challenges that we've talked about throughout the course of the call. We have to deal with government, like David was talking about. We have to deal with macroeconomics. We have to deal with labor shortages and inflation and things like that. All these challenges that we have facing us that have grown in scope over the past, quarter of a century that we're dealing with. And these technologies that Humberto just talked about is how we can solve those problems and how we can make running an FBO easier. I'm going to throw out a big word here. And I mean, this is a big word for native speakers. So Metathesaphobia. Anybody have any guess as to what that word means? Yeah, obviously, it's a fear of something. It's a fear of change. And man, as an industry, oh my goodness, we do not like change. I'm gonna go. See, I keep going back to how old I am. When I first started in this business, and I was a line tech, I started as a line service technician at Priest Aviation, Chicago, in the early to mid 1990s. I was actually on the ramp, on the line, when FBOs started to realize, holy crap, the airplanes aren't taking fuel. When the airplanes started to get legs long enough that, when I first started, every single airplane came in, topped off, and went on to its next place, or took fuel and went to its next destination. And everything at the FBO was given away for free. That's just the way it worked. That's the way that was the business model. And all of a sudden, these airplanes would come in. I remember these conversations, a G4 would come in, spend the entire day there, use power, coffee, ice papers, take the crew car, do all that stuff, use all the FBO services. And then they would get an airplane and taxi out and leave with no fuel. As a business, we're sitting there like, what just happened? So it was the industry. We were caught off guard as an industry by that beginning to happen. We reacted after the fact. In this case, and this is something the big chains don't get enough credit for. The big chains, like, the Signatures and Atlantics and stuff, take the beating for us, the smaller FBOs, quite a bit. Signature, and this is the first iteration when they first, Butler and Page, they became Signature. They introduced the concept of these facility fees so that, okay, if you're not going to come here, you can use all my stuff. I'm going to charge you something anyway. And the rest of the industry took that up and adopted it, and that's how we've made money since then. And it's gotten way more sophisticated too. Now there's programs out there like FuelLinks that, if it doesn't truly understand your fuel pricing, it may tell operators not to come to your FBO. We have to be a lot more cognizant about our pricing and how we're handling our pricing and what we're exposing. We did a little experiment with when I was with Landmark, where we had an FBO that had a very high posted price. And we took that FBO, we took that posted price and, almost cut it in half. And I can tell you, I won't get the specifics here, but cutting our posted price in half increased our margin, because we were actually on the radar for people that we would have on the radar before. And we cut that posted margin to something that we're actually making anyway, because everybody knows that posted margin is just there for show. I mean, almost nobody's billing that posted margin as their fuel price. So, and that pricing is across the board. It's not just fuel I'm talking about. I'm talking about our especially in Latin America, your handling and really being clear about spelling out pricing, so that there's more transparency for the customers. It makes it easier for the customers to make those decisions. And again, that's one of those things where technology is going to enable that. We have this feature within X1 called Quick Quote that can be exposed out to customers, where when you get that phone call, you put in that type of that customer name, and you get all that information to quickly regurgitate to the customer. we want to take that to another level and start to automate more of that again, so your customers can do something about it. But all that stuff represents a lot of change, and our industry is scared of that. That change to facility fees, it was a reactive change. We did it after the fact. After we realized that this was a problem, one of the chains came in and said, well, crap, we can't run a giant business this way, and created that. So one of the questions I'm going to ask Monica to launch a poll question here is on how do you think your FBO runs today? Are you running it the old way? Are you running it antiquated? Are you running it on Excel and paper? Or are you a little dated? Yeah, I do have paper, but we do have some tools. We don't use Excel. We actually have a legacy FBO platform. Or are you on a modern platform? Are you on something cloud-based and just using that tool? The last step is, are you ahead of the pack? Are you using your cloud-based FBO software and you have some other cool things that you've used to enhance that further? We have an FBO that's one of ours that uses a low-code platform to do some other things that's specific to their location that wouldn't have made sense for us to build, but for them at their location, they could use this tool to enhance the functionality of the next one even further. So that's kind of the breakdown of technology. Are you really old? Are you okay? Are you where you're supposed to be today? Or are you ahead of the pack? That whole, we talked about that not being sustainable with airplanes coming in and leaving and all that. At the end of the day, it's been that whole from day one to today. It's all been about change, and that pace of change in the industry it's been gradual. It's been slow. It's been and we've reacted to it. Things like creating facility fees are all reactions to the industry changing around us. Well, those days of that pace of change are gone. I mean, look at what's changing now and how quickly it is. Think about last April, when as FBOs, we were very nervous about what the future meant for us when all travel was banned and what are we going to do? How's this going to work? There was no crystal ball to predict any of that. How many of us in that moment in April predicted that our businesses, that traffic would reach all-time records in general aviation within a year and a half? We will bet you not many of us. April of 2020 was kind of dark, and then now here we are with more business than we know what to do with. So how do we, the word meta is that's the Greek word for change. We'll talk about that a little bit more. You hear that word a lot these days. You hear about the Google metaverse. It's a very interesting term, and what's going on with that concept with the metaverse? It's the whole world is changing around us. There's another term that I'll tell you to look up. I'm not going to cover it here, but Industry 4.0 is the term. It's Industry 4.0 is this idea. It's the current state of the Industrial Revolution that we all exist in today. It was coined in Germany in 2011 by a group working with the German government on planning. Germans are very good at planning, and it's trying to create a whole new level of service with industry. It's a connected universe. It is what Humberto was talking about with IoT, with APIs. That is what Industry 4.0 is, and that's a huge part of what X1 is bringing. What we're as a group. And what the industry needs, and in all reality, I hope X1 is not the only company that's trying to do these things, because it's important for the rest of the industry to modernize, to meet the challenges that we're going to face in the next 10, 15, 20 years. These changes are already happening in some of our industry. It's already happening in our planes at this point. A plane can tell you it's broken before the pilot even knows. It can tell the pilot at the same time an annunciator light comes on in the cockpit. The airplane already sent a message to the mechanic that says, "Hey, we have a fault. This is the fault. This is the probable fix. That's just cool. And we need to kind of get to that level in our systems, and what's happening now with Cloud Connect, that device in the truck where we can write and read to that truck. I can actually plug that truck into our device and read the status of the truck itself. There's something in the industry that's been built into the trucks now called the data bus, that the truck actually has APIs that we can get that information back. So that's kind of the direction we have to head in. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen is basically every company everywhere that wants to succeed is going to become a tech company. That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, think about it. The software is building how we're going to operate going forward, and it is your company's OS. We're in a period where now these domain specific ERPs, enterprise programs like X1, that just X1 knows what an FBO is, and every industry is going to have to do that and adopt that technology to survive going forward. We're at a point in our industry now, and David said this, which I thought was great. He pointed himself out, and I'm sitting here talking about how old I am, and Dave's mentioning how he's the younger guy. It's David and Monica and a lot of the new leaders that are really the ones that are going to drive this. They're the ones that are going to drive the changes because they do have an innate understanding. They just know how the technology can work in their environment for them. They know the capabilities. All this change. What does it mean practically for you at running an FBO? This change is going on. Industry 4.0. How is it going to allow us to better control and understand our businesses, boost productivity, improve our processes? What's the automation look like? Those are all the things that our Industry 4.0 is bringing to industry. What does that practically mean for an FBO? Well, for the first time in my lifetime, actually probably everybody on this call's lifetime, the average age of a pilot is declining. That's the first time that's happened in like 40 years. The pilot group is actually getting younger. That's impressive. And what does that mean? Well, it's skewing younger because the pilot groups that are coming in, they're not even millennials anymore now. We're talking Gen Z is entering our workforce now. Generation Z, this is all they know. That's it. This is what Humberto was talking about earlier when he said he's got to explain to his kids that he didn't have a smartphone because they can't even imagine a world without these capabilities. I can order a burger now and track it to my building. Why can't I do that? And why can't I do that with my fuel? Why is there no capability at an FBO almost anywhere for the pilot to know that his airplane was fueled from his phone? We're enabling that now with our technology, but it's this new generation. That's their expectation. We'll go back to that customer service comment. This group that's entering our labor market, the people that are going to drive the decisions in our businesses going forward, that's their expectation, and as businesses, we're going to need to meet that expectation. It's where all this technology comes in. Add to that the challenges we talked about growing the business and our labor challenges. The same is true for them working for us. They don't want to, Generation Z doesn't want to use archaic systems that are slow and involve 50 million clicks to get their job done. They have that same expectation as their phone. It's got to be easy. It's got to be quick. It's got to help me do my job. It cannot get in the way. So, of course, even when it comes to bringing people in to work for you, the technology is becoming important. So it's a double-edged sword. You have You want to make sure your customers are happy. You want to have this technology to give your customers the transparency and information that they need. But now it's also impacting our people, our internally. We have to provide them the same tools because that's their expectations. And we're fighting a tighter labor market. We want good people. We got to give them good tools. So in the long run, it's just going to become more and more unacceptable to our customers and our employees to not have the level of visibility that the technology that's coming into our market is going to enable. And that's where, David, you talked about the fear of people adopting cloud, and the same goes for fear of people adopting new software like X1. It's a big change, man. It really does. It changes how you run your business. It's a lot of change. But what we have to start to point out here is that there's another fear that you should be looking at.
And Jim, I wanted to add that the fear is really dangerous too. 16 years ago, I worked for the Miami Herald, and we had a software that was like stuck basically in 1990, where I had to do verbs, enter work order, delete work order, and I'd have to go through a million screens just to get an ad campaign started. And the other challenge, and you still see this across any of these industries, is then they start creating quick solutions or reactive, and they buy another solution to put a Band-Aid on one problem that they have in one department, and then another solution, and then as soon as you know it, in the advertising world, it was sales coordinators, and we had 20 windows open just to do one job because none of the systems read each other and none of them talk to each other. So the industry, like you said, like if management is fearful of change, then you're setting yourself up for failure in the future, right? By not making those changes. And that's what happened 16 years ago. I was on a sinking ship called the Miami Herald, and they ended up having to sell their building because they just could not, they couldn't even fathom selling at the time what they called air, which was online advertising, because to them, they were selling air. So they had such a slow change. And this happens, I like to bring in the example of another industry, because this industry is not unique because other people, it's unique in the fact that it's taken even longer, right, than 16 years ago to come to the revelation that you need software to automate these things. But the standard is there, and the new management's in 16 years later. Now I'm, in a software company at a high management level, and I'm looking for solutions as well. So the same people, you have to listen to your new workforce, and the fact that people are still scared of change is going to sink you. Is literally going to sink your business.
What you have to be scared of is what you have to be scared of right now is not changing, because the world around us is changing at an accelerating pace. We are already selling to a changed environment. November 28th was one of the busiest days on records in traffic for general aviation, period, across the board. Why was it a busy day? Overall traffic was up 40% across the board for last month for GA. Where do these people come from? These are new entrants into our market. And these are, to a large degree, these are not the corporate barons, longtime CEOs. These are younger, new money with different expectations now coming into general aviation. Their expectations are going to be different. They're going to be more in line with what we talked about with transparency and technology. So we have to start to understand that, we just talked about our pilots getting younger, right? Well, our passengers are getting younger too. The people who are getting on these airplanes, the people who are visiting our FBOs, our lobbies, they're getting younger, and their expectations are going to be different. I mean, we can get into what this means for building an FBO of the future. That's going to have some impact on that. But really, it's about expectations. This new cohort that we're talking about, these younger pilots, this younger generation, Generation Z, the lower end of the millennials, what they want, their expectation is visibility and self-service options, because that's what they have everywhere else. If they don't ever want to walk in a Starbucks, and get the coffee and order it online and just not talk to anybody, They can do that, and I'm telling you right now, they have those expectations for us too. So we're going to have to figure out how to meet them. One of the reasons that, and let's talk about a little bit why all these new people are visiting us. Airlines suck. Really bad. I mean, and they keep getting worse. I mean, they're forced to deal with a lot more than we are. But as customer service entities, they are terrible. You know, and if you look at where they're using technology, the airlines themselves are still on some pretty old systems. Where they apply the most technology in the airline industry, in the airlines themselves, is fleecing the customers. You know, is dynamic pricing and making sure that the second time I look at the ticket, it costs more than the first time I look at the ticket. That kind of stuff. Where the technology is really having an impact for as a customer on that side of the world is really the airports are the ones that are driving the technology, making it easier to sit down at a seat somewhere, some little private chair, and with an iPad where you can order your own, order a burger or something like that. That's where the technology is being applied to the airline side. But no matter how much the airports spend on the airport itself, improving that experience, it is not going to be an FBO. It is not going to improve the experience of getting on an airliner. So
You know what, Jim? Sorry to interrupt you there, but
absolutely,
I feel that it's not just a matter of investing in technology; it's also a matter of standing by your technology. And now that you mentioned the example of the airline, I'm not gonna mention which airline. I don't mouth word anybody, but as I was coming back from NWAA last October from Vegas, I was about to board on my flight to Quito, and I downloaded this airline's app. I uploaded all my documentation, my passport, my COVID vaccination test certificate, every documentation that the airline requested on their app. And I cannot stress this out enough. It was not like a third party company. It was the airline's app. And after I enter all my documentation with 24 hours before, I get, the little green check that said certified to travel. So I go to the airport, I'm going through the duty free, I'm eating some good American food. And by the time I get to my gate, there's a huge line. And I said, well, there you go. That's why there's people who don't do, internet check-in. So I go through the fast line, and the counter agent tells me, have your documents been checked? And I said, yes, by TSA. No, by me? No, they haven't. Then you have to go back in line. I said, why? Because I need to check that you have your COVID vaccination and your passport. Say, it's all uploaded on the app. Yes, but I haven't seen it, she replies. And I said, why do you need to see it if I uploaded it already? Yes, because I have to see it. So I got into a big discussion with this girl. And, well, I was on my way on the gate, and she goes like, yeah, because you don't know anything about airport regulations. So I go back and say, sorry, it's not like I'm a big deal or anything, but you know who you're talking to. I'm an FBO manager. I've been in the industry for 12 years. I know what I'm talking about. The difference is that while I set the procedures, you're there just to follow. And you don't understand the procedures because there's nobody explaining you why. And the supervisor comes in and says, is there a problem? So no, there's not a problem, but I've been forced to stand in line for over 15 minutes. I can bet there's no more space for my hand luggage because I've been here talking to this girl, trying to make her understand that I've uploaded my documents into the app. And why? Why do you have to invest in an app? How much did that cost the airline in creation, in developing, in advertising the app? For this counter agent to go and says, no, that means nothing to me if I don't see the physical document. And I said, you know what? Well, I have no printer. I'm going to show you on my phone. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but you cannot deny boarding because of that. So the same thing happens in the FBOs, and that happened here as well, in a very, very low scale technology. I posted some QR codes all over the FBO, with internet access, with printers, with air printers, to make pilots more comfortable. Don't get up to ask for the password. Just go scan the QR code.
love QR codes.
Yes, and what you said, younger pilots understand that, so they go scan, go online, and keep doing. Older pilots, they don't understand that, and they don't like it either. And when I try to explain to them how it works, they didn't even know that, for instance, an iPhone has the QR code reader embedded. So they start looking for excuse. Oh no, but I don't have the app downloaded. I said, no, you don't need it. It's on your phone. And again, you need to stand by that, because my team says, David, we're creating a problem for the customers instead of a solution. So let's take those QR codes down and start, giving out the password on little papers like we did. I said, no, we need to stand by that, because we need to teach them what's coming. Because what's coming, it's no more paper. It's coming more QR codes. And next time you know it, I'm not going to hand you a menu from the hotel. I'm going to hand you a QR code. So you need to learn how it goes. And again, that's why we're staying behind, because we're investing, but we're not investing in our people. We're not teaching them to take advantage of that technology. I'm a new user for X1. Well, not user yet. We just sign off with X1, so I'm hopefully to use it in the future. But my team already told me, hey, David, and can we keep this as no? I said, no backups. I don't want to see your Excel files for backups. I don't want to see your little cuadernito, your little notepad as your flight tracker. I don't want to see that anymore. Once we go live, we go live, and that's it. So we had a session last week, and I said, hey, I want my team to be involved from the very beginning, because I'm not going to make this investment to have it, as an app on my desktop and having nobody using it. So I think that's like a little lesson to learn, that while you invest in technology, we all have to make sure that our team is on board, and that we somehow force them to use it and have them on the same page. So you don't have a gate agent fighting with me for 15 minutes that she doesn't have the documentation in front of her if the airline has it already.
There's another important lesson you mentioned in there that's for us as providers of technology. We have to make sure that the things we're building make sense for you guys at that level. And that's one of the things I pride myself on. And I think we have Caroline in one of these sessions during the week. From a customer service perspective, that listening is a huge component of what we're doing, and making sure that we're trying, because we do get, sometimes we have to get to the diamond in the coal, where somebody may ask us for something, and like the example you just said, she's asking for that paper, not understanding that what she really needs is just to know you have that stuff checked. So she's asking for the high level thing. Meanwhile, there's a detail in there. So there's a lot of burden on our end to make sure that what we build meets that bar.
And the communication. So there's two levels of communication there, though, that David's talking about. There's the communication internally that's going to happen with training and implementation that needs to have everybody on the same page, but then also communicating even to your customer base, right? On changes. Something as simple as maybe where the barcode is, we need to say, grab your camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
And put your camera up to the barcode. Something as simple as that, because we all assume that everybody else is on the same page as us. Correct. So something that's common to one person is not common to another person. So in preparation, when you're launching and onboarding, we also need to be thinking about how are you going to communicate these changes to your clients. And that's actually something even for us to think about at X1. What tools can we be providing to you guys to make the transition easier, even to your clientele? How are you announcing these changes?
So, we talked about the people and what's changed around people and what challenges we have to face around people and the pace of change. One of the things that's going to change, that is changing now, even what we sell is changing. I mean, we talked about before, we didn't sell anything before. In the US, we only sold fuel. Everything else is free. Now everything has, it's more a la carte than it was back then. But one of the driving forces, one of the things that we're going to have to adapt to in the very, very near future, and by near future, I mean like tomorrow, is the drive for sustainability. That conversation is not going to go away. I know from some of the older folks in the industry, just kind of they hear that word and they just walk away like, oh yeah, it's not going to go away. And we, I'm going to go back to those new employees we're talking about, those new FBOs we're talking about, the new customers we're talking about. This is a minimum expectation for their part. They want to make sure that the world they live in still exists. So for us as an industry, that's going to involve some differences. We're seeing that already today. We're seeing that with SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel. It is the future of Jet A. That's our stopgap measure for sustainability. We're already seeing it. We're already seeing it start to have an impact in our system. We have to deal with SAF inventories, even though it's a drop in fuel, it's being managed separately, but it goes through all the same systems. So it's already impacting systems, the sustainability. One of the bigger changes that you're going to see coming beyond SAF is the short term. SAF is going to make sure all the planes we have today, all the aircraft that we fly today, we can lower their emissions. We can have an impact on their environment, what exists today. That's not what's going to happen in the future. We're already starting to see, and I'm sure you've heard plenty of it. The cars are not going to be the only electric thing we're dealing with. Electric airplanes are coming. They exist today. There are companies like EHang, Lilium, Joby. Their aircraft are going to have a huge impact on our future. Even other environmental factors that aviation has an impact on. Noise, aircraft noise. These new aircraft. There's a very interesting video out there. I'll try and send out afterwards if I can remember, of the Joby CEO giving an interview or introducing the aircraft. He's doing the whole interview. The aircraft is behind him the whole time, and he's talking about it. And much to everyone's surprise, the aircraft takes off while he's talking. It's a real thing. He was showing the aircraft is real, but he continued to talk normally as the aircraft, taxied out, 50 feet behind him, 100 feet behind him. That's the noise level of these things. They sound like a bunch of hair dryers all going off at the same time. They're going to have a big impact on our industry, and they're going to have a big impact on our infrastructure. Think about it. Does your airport right now, does your facility have enough power? Just power, period. Not talking infrastructure, just enough power to charge 15 aircraft at the same time. The infrastructure at the airport level, at the FBO level, do you have charging locations? We don't even at this point really know what charging on an aircraft ramp looks like at this point. People are still working on those things, but the aircraft are on our doorstep. These things are coming. They're talking certification for EHang, they're talking certification for Joby, and they're talking certification for Lilium, which are some of the most advanced of these eVTOL aircraft. So this whole concept of urban air mobility is going to have it's part of that sustainability conversation, what these aircraft are capable of, but they're going to have a big impact on our businesses and how we make money. How do we charge for electric? Has anybody considered that? And I'm telling you, this is 2-3 years down the road that these problems are going to be on your ramp, not just something we're talking about theoretically here, on a call. There's another poll question there. We'll get back to in a minute. Is that how many people even know about it? It's called, the concept is called advanced air mobility. If you look at that image on the screen, that little aircraft there is just a concept, but that's advanced air mobility. I'll give an example that I use all the time. I live across the street from a mall here in Miami. In that mall, there's a parking structure. On the top of that parking structure is potentially a future FBO. Think about that. What if the FBO leaves the airport? Right now, there in the United States, there's about 3,500 FBOs. About international is about another 2,500 FBOs. There's another couple thousand handlers internationally. All in all, that market is maybe 10,000 on the high end. This idea of these aircraft starting to operate now urban air mobility would mean that I'd have an app on my phone. I could go up to West Palm Beach by calling one of these aircraft Uber-like and walking over to that parking garage, hopping on this thing and having me whisked to West Palm Beach, Jetson style, in 40 minutes. That is freaking cool, and it's coming. So the question is, can anybody think of an industry that knows how to handle the unscheduled arrival of an aircraft, arrival and departure of an aircraft better than an FBO? There isn't one. So we need to make sure we have our seat at the table as these things, as advanced air mobility becomes a reality. As FBOs, we need to be on top of this. We need to stay focused on the technology we have available and our capabilities to adapt to these aircraft. And it all goes back to the same thing. The fear of change is going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same pace anymore. We need to start thinking about this industry a little bit differently and adapting to what it's going to look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, instead of just doing what we did yesterday. Because what we did yesterday is not going to work in this new environment. And again, this is not stuff we're talking about. This is stuff that's happening now, today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's quick look at my notes here. So, as that fear of change and listen, Dave made a good point about the cloud and people, they fear the cloud. If you fear it, understand it. You will not fear it anymore. It's that simple. If it's something that you're scared of, why are you scared of it? Understand it. Figure out what that problem is, and fear becomes understanding, and it becomes risk, and you mitigate risk, and that's how you move forward in this. And we're all going to be forced to do that in the coming decade. So it's what I hope is that from this conversation, everybody comes away from this conversation thinking hard about what their business is going to look like 5 years, 10 years down the road, and you begin to start to plan that out. And that as an industry, we can adapt. I'd really, this urban air mobility concept, I hate to see some other companies pop up to do what we can do great, because we've sat flat-footed as that industry evolved around us. So that's kind of the end of my spiel. It's really about what our future looks like and how we're, as an industry, we're going to have to adapt to change and understand it and embrace it, because otherwise the rest of the world's going to pass us by, and with this increasing pace. So we have some time left. I would love to open it up to some questions about some of the stuff we just talked about. David, if you want to close it out, if any of the things we just talked about, if you guys have been thinking about down there, what impact do you think that stuff is going to have on Latin America? Because I can tell you right now, the urban air mobility concept is not U.S. specific. There is massive development going on in Asia, in China. Lilium is a European company. I cannot remember there's another Latin American manufacturer that's working on it. Embraer is working on it. This is global. This is going to be a sea change in our day-to-day lives for advanced air mobility, and we are on the doorstep of it. So David, I mean, you have any just going over the customer changes and the people, customers and employees. What's your take on that from down south?
Well, no, as you said, this is definitely coming. The airports here are all already converting into sustainable airports and trying to get all the certificates, getting ready to try to have a cleaner environment. But eventually, what you said, we're not going to be charging for fuel anymore. We're going to be charging for power, for electricity, and we're not prepared. I mean, to be honest, we're not prepared. I've seen these prototypes in NBAA last year. Even you say, this Uber kind of helicopter, quadrocopter, whatever, and you said, well, this is cool. We're approaching the future, and it's cool to see this as a gadget, or to say, hey, I'm going to be a passenger in one of those things one of these days. But then you think, oh my God, I'm going to be handling and dispatching those things. And that's not very fun anymore because you're not prepared. I have no idea how these things work. Uh, what if one of these things come without a pilot? Who am I going to charge to? Because the pilot is going to be playing, and you're going to say, and who's flying the thing? And it takes off, remote controlled, and we have to, as you said, we have to be prepared. I think it's important for us as FBOs because we've been here for a long time. Oh well, most of you have been here for a long time, and we've been,
You calling us old, David?
we've been struggling in this industry to get it work, to get to make it into the market. And I would hate to see it that we're all left behind because we were not able to stop seeing a commercial jet and filling up with fuel instead of looking at one of these modern aircrafts and powering them with electricity and leaving the table open for whoever comes in next without any experience whatsoever, just because we were too slow, because we were too afraid of change, because we were what's the word when you an unbeliever. They said, no, that's not going to happen, that's too far away, that's 15 years from now, I won't be here anymore. And that's not the kind of thinking we need to have. And I think you're right. I think this is not US based, and I can think that yes, that's going to be launched in the US first, but that doesn't mean one of those guys is going to fly over because they want to go to the Galapagos, for instance, and they're going to catch me in the curbside and say, I have no idea what you are, how to treat you, how to charge you, how to dispatch you. I have no idea how we could even imagine to start working on those.
Galapagos is a great example because one of the first places that they're talking about using these aircraft, and there's a company called Eve that builds them, and out of Australia, they signed a deal for 50 of these aircraft to visit the Great Barrier Reef, and it's because these aircraft have a much lower environmental impact. Correct. Than a traditional aircraft does. So it's a perfect environment for that. I think the Galapagos is that's a great idea.
As a passenger.
Yep. Yeah. And it really is. It's going to be a lot of change for us, and it's not as far away as everybody thinks.
It's not.
To start adapting to it sooner. Like I said, these guys just bought 50 of them.
Yeah. And my best friend from high school, he lives in Germany now, and he's an engineer, and he's building these things. He sent me some videos, and he's explained to me how are they trying to build and control these quadrocopteros, they call it in Spanish. I don't know the translation, quadrocopters. I don't know. Jim, probably you're the expert. But yes, these things are real, and I know people. I know this guy who's building them, who's programming them. So it's a matter of, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years tops before we see those flying over. I think Amazon is making deliveries on drones already.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, we have to adapt. That's for sure. We have to. I have like a disadvantage that my FBO is within an airport, the international airport. So it's not really in my power to get supplies for fuel, for power, for instance. But it is our job to go there and tell them, hey, open your eyes. This is coming.
Yep.
We have to talk about that. And what you said, the parking lot in front of you, it's a potential FBO. Yes, it is. Maybe shopping centers are future FBOs, or a busy city. There's a whole building that's going to be turned into an FBO for, of course, domestic traffic, but still.
And as an industry, we don't want to let that opportunity pass us by. And if we don't get involved, then we don't, we're the best at this there is. And these, we need our seat at the table, and this is how we get it.
Mm-hmm.
By telling them we understand it and we're preparing for it. Otherwise, if we sit on our laurels, it's not going to work out well for us as businesses.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So, does anybody have any questions? If you hit that little questions button in the corner there, we have a few minutes left. We're more than happy to answer some questions. If you want to know about an API, if any ideas you have when we talked about, if you want to discuss a specific challenge, feel free to drop a question in that questions box, and we'll see if we can help you with some answers. While everybody's working on questions, I'll actually go through some of the polls. We had, on a scale of 1 to 10, technology-wise, most of the respondents, about 30% of them, felt they were about a little over halfway through at a 6. 33% of the respondents felt they were a 1, and the technology is not adopted, and they're not where they need to be as a company. The biggest challenges everybody says they're facing is costs. I mean, the biggest 57% of respondents said cost. That is universal. That is not an FBO specific problem. I mean, we're dealing with that. I think I got cold cuts the other day and spent $50 on cold cuts. I don't think I ever did that before. So, but it's a challenge, especially. And what's funny is that, we're looking at fuel prices right now that are some of the highest they've been in a very long time. And one of the biggest arguments against SAF adoption was cost. If Jet A gets close to parity on SAF, you're going to see SAF adoption start to climb really quickly. One of the other biggest items that people mentioned was change management and staff adopting of that change. What David talked about, and there's some responsibility on the technology providers like FlightBridge and X1 and FuelLinks and those guys to make sure that our technology is accessible and people can learn it. But we're only part of that puzzle. As the owners of your businesses, your staff, there is a burden on you to clearly communicate the vision of the use of that technology to your people. You can't just give them a tool and not tell them how to use it. There has to be some instruction. What do I need you to do with this tool? From that perspective. One of the other issues that was brought up in that poll was it's hard to make. There's a lot, and we deal with this on a daily basis when it comes to selling with X1. We deal with customers that, the customer service reps, the managers, even the GM in a location may be like, oh my God, we need X1 tomorrow. This is going to help me do what I do every day so much. But they get an owner that, oh my God, yeah, but it's change. Change is bad. A lot of what we talked about here is the answer to that change, is that we're in an environment now where change is critical. If you don't change, it's going to hurt. So when you have those conversations with management, when you're talking about why you need to adopt technology, that's your tack. It's a huge part of what you're going to talk about, is how that change is going to pass you by if you're not on top of it.
I want to thank David for joining us today, because one of the reasons why we reached out to you, David, is because it was a lot of fun doing the demos with you, and you were so excited with the technology. And though you don't have a technology background, your enthusiasm was so apparent. I mean, he threatened to steal one of the single point devices that he wanted to go and play with them. So thank you for joining us today, and and thank you for choosing us too.
No, Monica, thank you for the invite. I feel honored to be invited to speak here. And yes, I don't have a technology background, but I was very interested in the demo because of that, because I feel that we're staying behind in my FBO with that we need that change, that we need to adapt, that it's embarrassing that you have a pilot in front of you and he's telling you about his next 3 operations, and you have to go, flipping over the notepad to look in the date and write it down. That doesn't look professional anymore. And you have to go, oh my God, sorry, do I have like a little, whiteboard so that I can change it? And no, thank you for that. It's been very fun to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with X1. I think you have a lot of potential there, and I'm very, very eager to start with that. Kind of lazy on the onboarding process, but I know that once we're there, it's going to be fun.
Thank Christian too. Christian Lopez is on the chat. Pointed out that it helped them in a lot of ways. Christian's over in Jet Center, LA, on the west coast of the States. Thank you, Christian. I really, it's always refreshing to hear that what we're trying to do, we're actually accomplishing. Just the fact that it helped you in more than one way is awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. So if we don't have any questions, I would like to thank everybody for their time today. It was great to get to babble for a little while. Humberto?
Sorry, Jim.
Just signing off, telling everybody thank you and appreciate your time today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. And we'll see you tomorrow. We're going to be at S&D as well in January. So send us an email if you guys are going to attend, and we'd love to meet up with you in person. And if anybody has any ideas for further topics, we'd love to continue doing workshops like this and invite people from the community to come and share their knowledge and their industry knowledge and experience with us.
I see Vicky Matzo on. I think we should drag Vicky into one of these to talk about supply challenges and supply.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Again, we appreciate
everyone.
very much you showing up and listening to us. Thank you. If any questions afterwards or we can do anything for you, please reach out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.